Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be jumping into the history of the Hausa Kingdoms of West Africa.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm excited about this one because,
We too.
these kingdoms are,
Yeah.
they're fascinating, right?
Yep.
You've got these incredible trade routes,
Yeah.
the spread of Islam,
Huge.
a really huge ethnic group in West Africa, right?
Yeah. Yep.
The Hausa people,
Yeah. One of the biggest ones.
yeah, one of the biggest.
It is.
And
Yeah.
they've got this really interesting origin story too, so.
That's right. Yeah.
Like, we're going to be looking at, like, a figure named Bayajidda,
Right.
who's like this, I don't know, almost mythical founder figure. I don't know, it kind of reminds me of King Arthur meets the Arabian Nights or something. I mean, get this.
He's larger than life for sure.
Guy might be a prince who fled from Baghdad and ended up founding these powerful kingdoms, so.
There you go. Talk about a journey, huh?
Yeah. Talk about a journey.
Yeah.
So I guess we should start by saying, like,
Yeah.
when you're dealing with these ancient kingdoms,
Yeah.
It's always
tricky.
it's always tough to be like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is exactly
He's the first guy,
who was the first guy.
Yeah.
When did it all begin?
Right. Right.
And luckily, we've got some,
Yeah.
texts that kind of give us some context. We're going to be looking at the history of the Hausa Kingdoms and also a history of West Africa.
Great sources. But
But like you said, the
Yeah.
oral tradition is so important with this.
it's real with the Hausa Kingdoms. It's so key.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, how much emphasis they put on
Yeah.
the transmission of these stories
Yeah.
from generation to generation.
For the griots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're not just storytellers. They're like
Yeah.
the living embodiment of history.
Living is history.
Yeah.
They're the ones who keep that memory and that heritage alive. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So, okay, so we've got to talk about Bayajidda.
Let's do it.
So this guy, right,
Yeah.
he shows up in Dahama,
Mm-hmm.
and he, like, slays this, like, terrifying snake that's been, like,
Right out of a myth.
I know, terrorizing the people,
I know.
right? And so, like,
Classic hero stuff.
classic hero. What a way to, like,
Make a first impression.
make a first impression,
First
talk about
impression.
it. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah.
So,
Instant legend.
and then he marries the queen, right?
Night. That's right.
Magashi the Rama,
Yeah.
and their kids,
Yeah.
or their descendants, I guess.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean.
Well, I guess kids first and then descendants.
Yeah. Well, first you got to have the kids to get the descendants.
Right, exactly.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's their descendants.
But it's their descendants.
that we're talking about who go on to found the Hausa Bakwai.
The Hausa Bakwai.
7 Hausa states.
Yeah, the 7 Hausa. So I think maybe this is a good time to, like, break down
Yeah.
what were those states, right? Like, what are we talking about?
All right, so you've got Daura,
Okay.
Kanut, Katsina, Zaria,
Okay.
Gubir, Rano,
Mm-hmm.
and Biram.
Biram. Okay, so those are the 7.
Those are the big ones.
The 7, yeah, the core states.
The OG Hausa states.
Right, and they're all
Zalified, yeah.
they're all unified by this, like, shared ancestry
Back to Bayajidda.
through Bayajidda, which I think is really
It's powerful, right?
powerful.
It's the shared heritage
Yeah.
that really fostered a sense of unity
Yeah.
amongst all these different
Yeah.
Hausa people.
And like we were saying before, it's like
Mhm.
not just about, like, the historical record. It's like they're
in the story.
it's in their cultural memory. It's in
their blood.
it's in their blood. So
Yeah.
But it's not quite as simple as just
Yeah.
7 states,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we've got this other group.
Yeah, you got these so-called illegitimate states.
Right. The Banza Bakwai, which is like, I don't know.
The Banza Bakwai.
It kind of adds a whole other layer to this, right?
It does.
Because it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What
What makes them illegitimate?
makes them illegitimate?
Yeah.
And, like, who
Right, and who's deciding that?
who's telling that story?
Yeah, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge to that whole narrative. So,
Absolutely. It adds this, like, kind of air of mystery
yeah, it's like, okay.
and intrigue, right?
Were there power struggles?
Oh, I'm sure.
Were there people who were trying to, like,
I'm sure there were all sorts of rivalries and
yeah,
groups that were
Yeah.
excluded.
excluded from the main narrative?
It reminds us that history is
Yeah.
it's messy, it's complex, and it's definitely not straightforward.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely not
Mm-hmm.
straightforward. And it's also not, I mean, these kingdoms weren't just,
These guys are busy.
they weren't just sitting around,
Yeah.
like, telling stories and,
No, they were making history.
right. I mean,
I were out there.
they were deeply involved in the trans-Saharan trade.
The trans-Saharan trade.
Like, we're talking
camel caravan.
We're
right?
talking massive camel caravan.
Laden with gold, salt,
Oh, yeah.
textiles,
Crossing the desert.
across vast distances,
Right.
connecting all these different cultures and peoples.
I don't know. I always think about that, you know?
Yeah, it's romantic in a way.
It's romantic. Like, can you imagine
Yeah.
the bells on the camels?
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the hustle and bustle of these,
Oh, yeah, we've been
trading centers. And
a sight to see.
yeah, it would have been incredible.
Yeah, and I mean, some of these cities, like Kano, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with its strategic location, it became like a
Yeah.
real hub
Huge, yeah.
for textile production. Marketplaces, I
Yeah.
mean, it was really a center of economic and cultural activity.
And this trade, like, it fueled the growth of these cities.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. It brought in not just goods,
Yeah, ideas.
but also
Yeah.
ideas, right?
Religious practices.
Religious practices,
Yeah.
so like Islam. Right.
Exactly.
So let's talk about Islam for a second, because,
Sure.
it's like we were talking about Bayajidda potentially coming from the Middle East.
Mhm.
And then you've got the spread of Islam
Right.
throughout West Africa. So it's kind of like, is that just a coincidence?
Well, it's definitely a fascinating connection.
That's a fascinating connection.
Yeah, and while
Yeah.
scholars might debate about the
Yeah.
exact timeline of
Yeah.
how Islam arrived in the Hausa Kingdoms,
Right.
pretty much everybody agrees
Yeah.
that the trans-Saharan trade
Yeah.
played a huge role in its spreading.
Right.
Think about it. You've got these scholars, these merchants traveling with the caravans,
Mhm.
and they're sharing their
Yeah.
faith.
Sharing their ideas.
Their knowledge, yeah.
Right alongside their goods.
They're alongside their goods. Yeah, it's like, and it's just so interesting to me
Mhm.
how all these things kind of come together, right? You've got like
Right. It's like
this like legendary prince figure.
all these different threads.
You've got the snake sling.
Yeah,
You've got
yeah.
these powerful kingdoms.
Powerful kingdoms.
These huge trade routes
Yeah. Spanning continents.
spanning continents.
That's
And then the spread of this major world religion.
right. And it all comes together to tell this
Yeah.
incredible story of the Hausa people.
Yeah, the tapestry of Hausa history.
Exactly.
It all kind of comes back to
To that oral tradition.
that world tradition. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the legend of Bayajidda in Hausa folklore.
Yeah. There's another one.
Hausa
Myths and Legends.
Right, Hausa myths and legends. That really dives deep into
Yeah.
how the griots have kept this history alive.
Yeah. It's really powerful. So
Yeah, and it makes you think about
yeah, it does.
our own family histories, right? Like if we were to trace our own ancestries back
Yep.
centuries,
What kind of
what would we find?
what stories would we find?
Would we find tales of bravery,
Yeah.
adventure,
Maybe even,
even a touch of the mythical?
yeah, a little bit of magic in there.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? And I mean,
It makes you wanna
it makes you
start
want
the
to
journey, right?
go on a journey. Maybe to
West Africa
maybe to West Africa to like experience this culture,
to see those places.
to see those places firsthand. So,
Yeah, it's out there waiting.
it's out there waiting. All right, well, that's our deep dive
Yeah,
into the Hausa Kingdoms.
awesome.
So,
That was great.
I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. All right, bye.